Today, Republicans are pretty divided over a vote set for next week that would force the Justice Department to release all the case materials. Yesterday, we saw thousands of pages of Epstein emails released by the House Oversight Committee, emails between Epstein and some of the most powerful men in the world of politics and big business. President Trump is not one of those men, but Epstein does speak about him many, many times. The convicted sex offender was closely tracking Trump's political rise, at times calling him crazy and suggesting he had dirt on his one-time friend. Now, Trump has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. The White House says it's all a hoax to distract from Trump's political successes. But it is something that Republicans will vote on, either for or against, next week. And a growing number of Republicans are signaling that their vote will be a yes.
I'm a Florida girl. I have 2 daughters. So I'm thinking, I mean, you know, I'm sure that the president has nothing to fear.
Yeah.
We do need to know. We do need to know everything about Epstein.
If this comes on the floor, I will vote for it. I want transparency. To me, it's the worst PR job I've seen anywhere. I mean, initially, you know, back in February or March, whatever it was, we have all the Epstein lists right here. We're going to release it. And then all of a sudden, there's nothing. I mean, it's sort of they shot themselves in the foot on this.
I'm going to vote for it if it comes up. Pam Bondi was supposed to come to the House and answer these questions. And look, I'm not on the Judiciary Committee, but I did want Pam Bondi to come and do some explaining.
And I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters. And David Chalian, I'm going to start with you. What is your read on where we are on the politics of this right now?
Well, I mean, I think broadly it's pretty clear that the president doesn't want this in the ether. Excuse me. But I think the politics in this has shifted over time. And I think that earlier in the spring and the summer, we saw a huge division inside the MAGA world over this. There was real anger because there was a lack of a delivered promise, a promise from Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Pam Bondi, others that said this is going to come out. And there was real anger and frustration. What happened was it exploded as a story this summer. The mainstream media and the Democrats glommed onto it. And all of a sudden, the division inside MAGA started to be a bit more muted because they saw that their political opponents were trying to use it for advantage. I still think as what you just played there, Dana, the Republicans on the Hill are still responding to constituents at home who really want transparency here, even if it's not a get Trump thing. They want the transparency. And that piece is still where I think the sort of Republicans on the Hill and Republican voters broadly are at odds with Trump.
And just to that point about transparency versus the politics of this, or maybe it all goes together. The speaker tried to push this through, or somebody on the Republican conference tried to push this through by UC, meaning there would not be a recorded vote on this. And a Democrat said, no, that's not going to happen. So there will be a recorded vote next week. And the speaker said, I'm going to get a little bit technical here, but I'm going to explain why I'm doing it. The speaker said last night to a reporter that it could be done under the suspension calendar. Why does that matter? Because he believes it's going, I mean, everybody believes it's going to pass at this point, but the suspension calendar would mean 290 to pass because you need a supermajority effectively, which tells you where he understands his conference is, which is it's not just going to be those 4 we've been talking about who signed the discharge petition. It's going to be a pretty sizable Republican vote yes to release these files.
Absolutely. And you've heard people like Republican Thomas Massie, of course, one of the people, the only Republican to really put this forward. We now know that there's 4 Republicans who signed on to it, but he has said publicly that he has Republicans going into his office telling him, hey, not going to sign that petition, which obviously passed yesterday, but we will get on board with that vote. And that is definitely something, of course, the White House is thinking about. Look, I've had a lot of conversations with people, though, at the White House about how to handle this. Obviously, we saw one of their last-ditch efforts yesterday by calling in Lauren Boebert to the not even just the White House, to the Situation Room of all places where, you know, normally you go over warplanes. I've never heard them have a member there for something like this, to see if they could convince her to to take her name off of that and not have this pass. Obviously, that wasn't successful. And so now they have to figure out where to go from here. There's a lot of frustration. The president himself is very frustrated at all of this. But so the broader sense I get from the administration, again, because there a lot of the people in the White House were the same ones, as to David's point, that were calling for this, calling for this transparency.
Including the FBI director.
They have a tough thing right now, because I think the emails, for whatever they were yesterday, and I think we've all been very clear that I don't think there's any, legal implications for Donald Trump, for the president, in those emails, but they are, of course, embarrassing. But I think the most serious question it poses is, has the president known more that he has been keeping quiet, and has he really been as transparent as they always promised? And having this all come out is, I think, the problem that they are trying to protect him from.
And Donald Trump is, as he always has for decades and decades, using the Roy Cohn playbook to not apologize, double down, deflect, and say, oh, this is a them problem, not a me problem. In one of the many Truth Socials he has put up, there should be no deflections to Epstein or anything else. And any Republicans involved should be focused only on opening up our country. This is before the shutdown ended. And then, in other words, the Democrats are using the Jeffrey Epstein hoax to try and deflect from their massive failures hoax. So he is starting to try to make this the same kind of topic that he did with Russia and other issues
in 2020,
in 2020,
January 6th, and all that stuff. But guess what? It's not working because he and lots of people in his administration, as we've said, have stoked this for years and years and years. And their version of it was that it was really Democrats who were involved in it. And once Donald Trump got into office, he was going to uncover all of this. I think part of the problem is, and you touched on this, sort of average voters. There is a sort of conspiracy theory-minded approach that average voters have about the elites. This idea that there is sort of a seedy underbelly of the elites. And Donald Trump, of course, came into office promising that he would uncover it. And so now you have this situation where if you're a Republican, how can you vote against transparency? How can you vote against these victims and survivors who came out in testimony, in searing testimony, and in books about what they experienced? And so listen, this is a problem for 2026. It's potentially a problem for 2028, whoever runs in the Republican primary. If you have Democrats and other Republicans saying, why didn't you stand with the victims? Why did you stand with sort of the elites who were involved in this?
And one of the reasons this is so scrambled now that we have seen so many of these emails is because of the people Epstein was emailing with, including Steve Bannon, who is one of the biggest figures in the MAGA movement. This is early June 2019, when then President Trump, in his first term, was meeting with now former Prince Andrew during a UK trip. Epstein writes to Bannon, Prince Andrew and Trump today, too funny. Epstein again to Bannon, recall Prince Andrew's accuser came out of Mar-a-Lago. And then Bannon replies, can't believe no one is making there's something in there, but the connective tissue. Now, I also want to say that initially Bannon's identity is redacted in these emails, but a source did confirm that that was him. So there's the content of that, which is, raises a lot of eyebrows. But I am more intrigued with the fact that Steve Bannon in 2019 was emailing with Jeffrey Epstein.
I mean, the people Jeffrey Epstein was apparently in touch with throughout the course of this, it's just
Larry Summers being
never
one of them,
endings. The Biden White House counsel, Kathy Rumler. I mean, it just is a never-ending association, which is fascinating in and of itself. I do think here that for President Trump, and as you said, there's no clear implication of wrongdoing here in these emails. But it begs the question, and this is what I think is so politically problematic for him right now, is why are you opposed to the full transparency of this being released? Just why?
Yeah.
Why are you opposed to that? It's a very simple question because, when Speaker Johnson was on with Jake Tapper earlier this week, said, Grijalva's going to get sworn in. They're going to be 218. This discharge petition is going forward. And Johnson's response was, it's kind of moot now. House Oversight has been investigating this. This is a moot point.
Exactly.
Except that Boebert is being brought to the Situation Room to get her. So Donald Trump doesn't think it's moot. Well, why? Why is that?